Okay, so off we go. So Clodagh Malone, I don't know you at all, and so welcome to my little pink kitchen, which is where I've been interviewing people all through the lockdown. And it's lovely to meet you. I mean, we know each other from Facebook, but I've actually
Absolutely.
we've never connected before. So mother and baby homes is the subject, I suppose, today. And I work in baby homes.
Yes.
But we don't have any mothers, so
Yeah.
we're another level. We're another level down the the pipe, I suppose. But so I want to talk to you. I'm going to ask you like really dopey questions, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Because I don't know much about the details. I know I was infuriated recently when I saw the vote going through. Then some people were trying to make logic of the vote and say, no, the government were forced to do it. And then Higgins made, we think, the right decision by saying what he
Yeah.
said. And that way it left it open for people to sue, as long as people have the money for lawyers to sue.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the generally, like the local Joe or Josephine of survivors generally didn't go to great homes, Debbie. You know, so they wouldn't have got a lot of survivors through no fault of their own in education. So certainly when it came out that night, I actually lost my hearing for 2 weeks. It was like psychosomatic, it was trauma. And so I was 8 hours on the phone to survivors, absolutely in bits. So you've got to remember, I'm one of the younger survivors. I'm 50 and I was born in 1970. But with the elders of our community that are in very poor health, they just couldn't make logic. You know, we're not used to that kind of jargon. And it was slipped under our nose. You know, it was done on a Sunday night. I think it was a bank holiday the next day. But I suppose we kind of rewind. The best thing that came out of this, I suppose, repeal the seal, certainly for Manon Heron. And you reached out to me and I reached out to you. And we all have something in common, the love of children, innocent children. So certainly the backing of Irish women and women, I suppose, worldwide that came together for us was incredible. So it put us on the map of people are kind of sitting up now and going, mother and baby homes. Sure, weren't they just where, you know, the working class tarts went in? And now people are going, actually, Clodagh is a product of a mother and baby home. And to be able to say it and not to be ashamed anymore, Debbie. So I went off on one there, sorry.
That's all right. That's okay. No, I understand, because to be honest with you, you've so much to say that we could be on this. We could be on this for 2 hours, but we don't have 2 hours. So I'm just going to go back to the basics of this, because most people we get the sound bites on the news. We read the papers. So you tell me, do you tell your own story, Clodagh, of your mom?
Yes.
You do.
Yeah.
Start off with. I'd love to know that story.
Okay, so my mother was in a relationship with my father for 1.5 years, and she found out that he was cheating on her. Actually, both my parents live very close to you, Debbie, and they walk the same road, but they don't speak. So she fled to England, thinking, I don't know what she thought. She went over to stay with family. She presented herself 4 days before my birth to a Catholic Rescue Protection. Now, they had the claw of the Catholic Church, went over to England. They said to repatriate Catholic mothers. Sure, we weren't even born at that stage, you know. So my mother was escorted with a girlfriend of a priest who was very heavily pregnant as well, onto a boat, and they were taken by the guards into St. Patrick's Mother and Baby Home.
Sorry,
and incarcerated.
A girlfriend of a priest?
A girl was pregnant. Well, that was very common, certainly in the 50s, 60s, 70s. So incarcerated into St. Patrick's Mother and Baby Home, which is on the Navan Road in Dublin. Now, it was the largest mother and baby home in Ireland. They reckon about 4,000 children died there. When the mortality rate at one stage in the mother and baby homes, before they discovered the banished babies, we'll talk about the children going overseas down the line, the mortality rate was up to 75 to 80%.
My
with the
God.
babies. With myself, eventually, when I got my files, I was a forceps delivery. My mother had no pain relief, and there was no doctor present. They had nuns screaming into their faces. It was horrendous, Debbie, and my mother's very, very traumatized by the experience. And then at 10 weeks, I was baptized Aileen. 2 days old, and then at 10 weeks I went out to my new parents, and my mother was put in a taxi from St. Patrick's to go to South Ann Street, Clodagh, and she was in one room and my respectable married parents were in another room, and she had to hand over her baby.
All right.
So that was terribly, like, just, she was never the same after that. And how could you be? And then she got a bus back to St. Patrick's. And then, like, with a lot of women, mothers and Magdalene survivors, they just got on the boat. They wanted to get out of Ireland. Irish people had treated them, the Catholic, the state and society had treated our mothers so appallingly that they could recreate themselves. So she went to England and was supposed to come, because I don't know whether it's the same with you do fostering or adoptions. There's a 6-month window that the birth mother can change her mind. So my birth mother had written loads of letters and sent presents, but Debbie, I didn't know. I was never told. I went to like a Catholic school in Mount Anville, and I also went to Alexandra College, and I very luckily was, I suppose, shielded by bullying, and shielded that with my, I suppose, other survivors went to, say, mainstream schools and were called bastards, and, you know, that's not your mother and all of that. So life progressed, and I had 2 children, still thinking that I was abandoned. And sadly, my adopted mother passed away when I was 24, but my adopted parents' marriage broke up when I was 3.
Okay.
So it wasn't a great start. To be coming from supposedly a home into what, but that's just life. And wouldn't change it. I wouldn't, if I could turn back the clock, I wouldn't change anything apart from my mother. You know, I just wish that we had a better relationship. But I did meet my mother. In 1995, I wrote to the agency, and it was very unusual because normally with birth mothers, they come looking, but they didn't tell me that she had been looking for me. So they changed the law, you know, TUSLA and the Eastern Health Board and all of that. And I met her within a couple of weeks, and I had a full-blown panic attack. I walked into the room and the social worker was there, and my mother, and it's very hard to explain. That was the first person I saw that looked like me apart from my children. It was really bizarre. And we were cutting the head off each other. It was uncanny. And she went, Jesus Christ, you're like your father. So went for coffee, had a panic attack, didn't see her for 10 years, Debbie. She just couldn't, I don't know what it was, you know, they say post-traumatic stress. And I've met her, I haven't seen my mother now in about 5 years, but we would have a very, I would say, tempestuous relationship. The 2 of us have gone through something together that is, you can't describe to anybody the trauma, the separation. And like, she came from a family of 12. So she knew how to look after children. You know, she was the 2nd youngest. She didn't tell her mother. Her father passed away when she was very young. So sadly, she ended up in addiction, my mother. And it's terribly sad.
Terribly sad. We would have a lot of that in Russia. A lot of the mothers, like, there are mothers, because our children, a lot of them are social orphans, but a lot of the mothers would be alcoholics. And, you know, and it's only because their hearts are broken, you know, their lives have been wrecked, you know, by the system. So, okay, Clodagh, so tell me this. So well, first of all, I watch your Facebook group. I'm in it, and I don't comment on my organization, Children with Love, we don't do fostering or adoption, but we see people taking children out and fostering and adopting. I would have, that's another whole talk, because I would have huge views on that as well. But to come back to Ireland and the whole disgusting mess that it was. And not only, I mean, I'm not a religious person, and so you know, the church, it irritates me so much. They were so un-Christian. However they thought that their Jesus ever would have treated any human the way your mother and all of the girls with her were treated. I just don't understand it. But then it wasn't just the church. It was the police, it was the doctors, it was their own families that were so ashamed of them. So it was
the embassies as well. You know, the American embassy then got in on it, and certainly with the banished baby trade. But like I suppose through my work, I've met the Pope, and you know, you meet very affluent people, and it doesn't faze me anymore, because when you speak your truth, and when you speak for other survivors that can't voice their opinion, you would know, Debbie, you're a great speaker. It comes from your heart and your soul, you know, to see the damage that has been done to survivors. And like, we have survivors that literally, with women, might be gamblers, right? They don't drink or smoke, and they might sell their cooker, you know, to gamble money or whatever. These women have been through the institutions. So going back when my time, things were changing. You know, it was the Magdalen laundries, and then basically they were sending us out for adoption. They knew that we were currency. But before that, 1952 was the Adoption Act in Ireland. So children were boarded out. So say if you were born in a home, you would go on to an industrial school, letter frack, you know, and we know what went on in those places. And then from there, the women that would have gone to institutions would go on to the Magdalen laundries. Absolutely no sex education, will come out at 18 and be pregnant, and back the pathways back into the institutions. And this is what people don't realize with mother and baby homes, that they think it's only mother and baby homes. It's not. It's all the pathways that we have. We're all kind of interlinked. So with the adoptions, they certainly weren't vetted. With the different homes, there was one home in Sanford Road, St. Rita's, and that was where all the politicians and the priests and bishops sent their girlfriends. And they had a better time, say, than our mothers. It was more of a private home. I think, do you know Sanford Road?
Yes.
Yeah, Ranelagh. And then with some other places, the children were going out to America. So there were the mothers. Have you seen Philomena?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, Philomena. So the children were being kept with their mothers for 2.5 years, Debbie.
Right.
And then would be snatched. And, you know, an American couple would take the child home. These people haven't been vetted, and they weren't passed for adoption in their own country. So it was real little old Ireland, you know. Sure, what can we do? We'll pop by Shannon and we'll grab an old Irish child, Catholic, Caucasian, and we'll bring the child home for the wife. Beggars belief.
I saw a few stories where, like, soldiers on the way home from places like in Indonesia and all this, and some of the wars, were stopping and getting a child. But then I also think that maybe some American couples thought that they were rescuing these children as well, you know, because I mean, I do see it in my own world in Russia as well. People come in to adopt. It stopped now, but like Americans would come in and just assume that they're rescuing these children and bringing them into maybe, you know, different religion, you know, American Baptists and all this, whereas actually the kids were okay. They didn't really need the rescuing in a lot of cases, you know. They might have had an aunt or a granny who was prepared to mind them, but the Americans whisked in and took them away. Not only Americans, Italians and Spanish, you know, as well. But so to come back to the report that we're all going to hear about now again in January. I remember sitting on a bed in Russia about maybe 10 years ago, and I think it was the Murphy report. Report. And I remember it was on the news in Russia, and I was so ashamed that I was talking at a conference the next day, and I remember being so ashamed, thinking, oh my God, here I am, like being allowed into orphanages because the Russians just have given us like a green light to work wherever we want to work, open any door we want to walk through. And here's me looking at my own country on the TV, and the shame of what we heard from that report at the time, the abuse of children. So now tell me, this report that started, just to make it simple, so this report started in 2004, the current one, am I right? This one
the Commission of Inquiry was 2014. It was when Catherine Corliss had the news of the 796 babies in Tuam went out. Typical in Ireland, has to go out to come back in as news. And it was then we said, right, we need a Commission of Inquiry. We need to know how many children are dead. Like, we were experimented on, you know, without our mother's knowledge. A lot of us have underlying illnesses. This will all come out. So certainly with the Murphy and the Ryan report, the mother and baby home report is going to be the most shocking. And it's so shocking that they've actually set up counselling services all over Ireland as from, I think, next week.
So this is the one that was done in 2014 and is due to come out in January.
It's due to, yeah, January the 11th. Now it's been delayed, right? And
Yes.
Ministers Apone and now Roderick O'Gorman. So we think that we're nearly there, Debbie.
Okay.
You know, it's certainly with the sealing of the records was basically the government will never admit to anything that they can be sued for. And a lot of these people that worked in the homes, some of them are still alive, believe it or not,
Yeah.
you know, that the nuns have Alzheimer's or whatever. So everything's going to come out in this report. It's a 3,000 page document. It's about 2.5 foot high. And we're going to be given the condensed version of 300 pages. And I think that might be enough for us survivors, to be honest with you. Our solicitor might be able to get the full amount or whatever. So this is coming out, but we have had to fight and fight and fight. And we've 2 petitions gone to the European Parliament, and they have been deemed admissible. You know, so certainly they're taking us seriously. This,
Sorry, who cuts 3,500 pages down to 300? Whose job is that to do that?
That would be DCYA.
What is
that would be the Department of Youth and Children Affairs.
Okay, so they cut it down.
Yeah,
okay.
They cut it down because what we did was it was set up in Bagot Street with Judge Murphy, right, and barristers and whatever. So we had to go in and give our testimony under oath.
Okay.
We swear in a Bible to say, yeah, we were born in a mother and baby home, but sure, they knew it because when the commission rang me to, you know, to give me my time, she called me Aileen on the phone.
Which
my
was
birth
your
name.
Original birth name.
And a lot of people don't know their birth name. I was like, Jesus.
Right.
So I had to go in with my husband, came up from Wexford, had to swear in an oath and go through everything. And that, I'm a lot more healed now, Debbie, than I was 6 years ago.
Okay.
And I found it very traumatic. I had to go into very, very private things about how my life was affected, you know, with depression and just health and all of that. My husband came with me for support. A lot of survivors said that when they walked out the front door of Bagot Street, they wanted to walk under a car.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So this is fighting, going to, I went to Brussels, we had to speak, like how many times do you have to, you know, a soldier doesn't have to go through what we have to go through and keep on showing our wounds. Because when you look, like people would say to me, you don't look adopted. Well, what does adopted look like? You know, you're supposed to be totally messed up. So this is where we're at the end. So for survivors, we have lost many survivors through all of this delay. We want an apology, obviously, the same as the Magdalene apology, redress, a medical package, like a full gold card, medical card for us, because of a lot of us, we bowel problems. A lot of us, we were force fed at 6 weeks.
Okay.
So it just, as well as being safety pinned to our cots for 23 hours a day. You know, the psychological trauma and all of that. Some people want memorials. Hume want memorials, absolutely. And I think that the government are going to have to cough up for it. Certainly, I say this is the worst report, and we'll possibly be talking again after January. I'll be on the gin.
You're right to be on the gin. I was on one of the things that, and it continually shocks me, was when I was reading one of the posts on your, because I know a lot of adopted people reach out to you trying to trace family. Yeah. And I see different messages coming in, and it is a private, closed Facebook group, and so it should be. But the constant, I just read one the other day. Some man, I'm not sure if it was a man or a woman, and they wrote to you saying that they had contacted Tusla. And what strikes me about the people is, and the tone of the messages on your Facebook group fascinates me, because, and I don't mean that in a voyeuristic way, but they're always nearly apologizing for being alive. And so some person wrote to you last week and said something like, you know, I sent in my papers. They told me in Tusla that it would take 2 years to be allocated a social worker, but they didn't. They also told me that my case mightn't be important enough to be heard by a panel. Like, and I, like, is this right? Like, they were asking you, they were reaching out to you saying, you know, I'm sorry, but is this what has to happen to me? And I did think my own story was very important, but they didn't seem to think it was. What in God's name are Tusla? Like, I mean, I know what Tusla are, but what the hell?
Well, you see, with our records, right? Our identity, everything was white, okay? And I mean, it was the worst experiment they ever did in Ireland. And certainly we have this little thing in our head, grateful. We're always told to be grateful, grateful that we were saved from our like horror mothers, and which wasn't the case at all. So
Yes.
certainly I suppose what I'm called is a search angel, and I started it 10 years ago when I actually realized I was born in a mother and baby home. My mother kept it a secret from me, my adopted mother, for many years. And so it's 2 years waiting when you contact TUSLA. Now it can be 3 years, and
Why?
certainly with the mothers.
Why?
Why?
Yes.
They say that they're understaffed. They say that it's a long process. So I just say to people, F that shit. What we'll do is freedom of information, data protection. Do you know your first name? So say your first name's Aileen,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I would go up to the GRO, get the books, and it's painstaking. It takes hours. And then I pulled an original birth cert and really hope that I can see. Facebook is revolutionary for us, and DNA.
Yes.
I found my birth father through DNA. But people are, and TUSLA treat survivors appallingly. And I said that to Roderick O'Gorman. You know, TUSLA is in Irish called a new day. It's the end for us. Like it's so people then come to me, and if I do this voluntary, and I love doing it because it's a real fingers up to TUSLA, and they've told me to stop doing it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not breaking any law. And I believe that every mother, father, and child
Mm-hmm.
deserve to know each other before they die.
Mm-hmm.
It's so unnatural to separate us from our blood, our lineage. So you saw that, and that would be, they can't believe it if I get a birth cert. They can't believe if I get a mother's first name. Or I'd say, I'll be your advocate. And you go in, and like TUSLA, they're holding your information, say like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then some nice social workers might say, put it down and say, I'm just going to the loo. And then I'm going, get the paperwork, go through it. She's left it for a reason. These would be the older social workers. But even down to people saying, what time was I born? What height was my mother? Which nobody in from a married or that stayed with their birth parents would even think that. The things that we think,
Mm-hmm.
both my parents have brown eyes and I have blue eyes.
Mm-hmm.
It might mean so little to somebody else, but to just know,
Mm-hmm.
your start in life,
Mm-hmm.
and that you weren't from a bad person. But
Mm-hmm.
TUSLA, there's no counselling provided for us whatsoever.
So
So that's why
are TUSLA doing their best, or are they have they been given a brief to really that you're not that much of a priority?
not that much of a priority. I think certainly with TUSLA, and again, I think this is something down the line that we'll be talking about, Debbie. The new generation of child snatching that's going on is just incredible. And it's going to be the same as mother and baby homes.
What is
They're
the new
taking children because it's a money making. Now, I totally understand with some children need respite.
From who? What do you mean? Explain that to me. I don't know what you mean by the new generation of child snatching. What's that?
So what TUSLA are doing now is they're very aggressive with their way of taking children from their birth parents.
Oh, right.
And then we have agencies coming in from England, I won't mention.
Mm-hmm.
And, certainly it's very attractive to become a foster carer in Ireland. Now, maybe people, looking at this, I know there are great foster carers, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt.
I know some amazing foster
Brilliant.
carers, actually.
And I've worked in John of God's, and I've worked in addiction, and I've seen the children do need. But I think the children need to be repatriated or know their heritage.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I'm saying about the foster care. And the foster carers, they're not the problem. It's TUSLA that are the problem. And
are you guys all complaining all the time about your treatment with TUSLA? Are you all the time complaining about that?
Well, no, a lot of survivors wouldn't be. There's very few advocates, because people just don't have time, or some people,
or the energy,
or just the passion. They're dealing with their own adoption. But I myself, Paul Redmond, David Kinsella, there'd be a few of us that would be long time, I suppose. And I love talking to adopted people. It's like we have our own language. Or foster people.
I don't know why you guys just don't. Anything you want, you should be given. Is how I feel about it. Like, you've been abused by our state. Your mothers were abused by our state. Yes. Clearly, their mothers were probably, it's going back generations. I don't know why you're fighting. I don't understand why you have to fight. Like, our government should be saying to you guys, sit down, tell us what you want, and have it all after what's been done to you all.
Yeah, certainly Roderick O'Gorman is now working with us. Now, he made a mistake. He made a huge mistake.
He did.
He caused an awful lot of trauma.
Yeah.
And he has admitted that he made a huge mistake to us. He didn't realise the power behind us. I didn't realise. Survivors. It was just incredible. To the likes of you and other people that have supported us. And thank you to everybody that has. Roderick we did do a call with him, and he said that he wanted to work with us. So we have a solicitor now, Dudley Potter. He's retired, and he's working with us. Dudley's just amazing. Okay. Tirelessly, voluntary for us. And the only one that really has. And then, Debbie, what we have, sadly, in our community, bullying.
What?
And bullying.
Bullying, right, okay.
Bullying, yeah. So bullying is rife amongst kind of survivor groups or whatever. Because when you're in trauma, you attract trauma.
Okay.
And it's very hard to move away. Some survivors just stay in that. It's the psychology of it. And how could they be right? You know, being treated so badly. And to end up in a flat at the end of their days and having to go, like there's one woman that protests outside the Dáil on her own. And people just like walk past her or whatever. But she was treated really badly. It's an embarrassment. This country is an embarrassment. Tusla are an embarrassment. People say not fit for a purpose. They're not fit for a purpose. You know, they have young social workers coming out of college that have no experience of adoption or the trauma.
Okay. So what happens in January when you get this report comes out? Will you feel some kind of vindication that we're all able to read this? Is that what you want? Will that help you? Is that a healing thing?
Yes, most certainly. I think for a lot of survivors, the healing for me was when I met the Pope. And I got an awful lot of stick.
Why? Tell me why that would be.
The healing.
Yeah, like what impact would the Pope have on all of this? What did you say to him?
Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Yeah, what did you say to him?
Yeah. So there were 8 survivors that went in. I asked him a question. Would he say at the Mass the next day in Phoenix Park that it was not a mortal sin for a mother to look for her child or for a child to look for her mother, as they were told in the mother and baby homes? He delivered. He did. My searches were up by 85%.
Okay.
I felt that was incredible. Absolutely incredible. For the woman down in the arsehole of Kerry that thought that she gave a child up, you know, whether it was rape or incest or whatever, and that she wasn't going to go to heaven. You can't take that belief away from her. So that, for me, I came away and said, my God. And I think it was a little bit selfish maybe in a way, Debbie. I was getting ready that morning and I cried. I wept and I said, my adopted mother and my birth mother would be so proud of me today. You know, that their girl, now they never met each other, was going to meet the Pope, because 2 of them were incredibly Catholic.
All right.
And that for me was, healing.
Okay, my God almighty.
But yeah, certainly January do you know what survivors want? An apology.
Yes.
Only one word: sorry. We did nothing wrong. We were totally innocent children. You see it with your work as well. You know, it's the most beautiful thing, a baby being born. But when other people choose that life for you, and, you know, when you go searching then for your blood, you kind of go, you know, the expectations of you are not what you came from. So,
Clodagh, I saw Enda Kenny giving a rant at one point in the news. I mean, he was probably one of the most, I'm not particularly an Enda fan, but he did give a fabulous speech at one point, going back maybe 8 years ago or something, about, actually it must have been the time of the Tuam babies.
It was the Magdalene.
Oh, that's right. Yes, it was. And he
did the Magdalene one, and then he did, think about Mother and Baby. I'm sorry to interject, Debbie.
And he was really, really angry and genuine. Yes. And do you have much support in the government? If you were, like, now, do you feel that you've any support coming from that direction?
Not really. I find certainly with the politicians, you know, when something becomes sexy with politicians, you know, they kind of jump on it.
Mm-hmm.
And even with the politicians who are adopted in the Dáil, they're not very supportive. And I
Mm-hmm.
suppose they have to kind of mind themselves, maybe, in a way. I don't know. But
Mm-hmm.
what we've had to become is, you know, we do this voluntary. We've had to become our own politicians and
Yes.
throw ourselves in front of the cameras. And Jesus, I remember the first time I did an interview, I had to take a Xanax, you know, 10 years ago. And I've been pushed into this position. And it's not what I expected, the way for life to turn out this way. But
Mm-hmm.
it's incredible. It's just, our own people are incredible people. And
Mm-hmm.
all these people, your people that be watching this, everybody's been affected by adoption
Mm-hmm.
in
No,
Ireland.
I
Everybody knows a young girl that went in.
yes, and I thought the scenes in Dawson Street 2 years ago, was it, or it wasn't last year, I think it was 2 years ago,
Mm.
when they all walked up Dawson Street into the Mansion House that time, and I think Higgins had the thing in the park, or at the time.
I was at that, yeah.
I mean, a lot of people older looked
Yeah,
broken,
yeah,
looked
yeah.
so. I mean, the trauma was
Oh, yeah.
literally, you could feel you could just feel it. It was like electricity.
Well, it was tangible. You know, I went with a survivor because they could bring, you know, a chaperone.
Yes.
And it was great, I have to say. Certainly Nora Casey, you
Yeah.
know, was kind of behind that, and it was incredible, and we had music and everything like that. But the one thing that they didn't realize, that survivors, a lot of them were going to be in wheelchairs,
Yes, I saw that
you
actually.
know. And so we were delayed an hour and a half going to the
That's right.
Mansion House.
Yeah.
And it's very funny with the Magdalens, because the way that they kind of fight amongst each other, because they were all reared together. So they're
Yes.
almost like sisters, you know.
Yes.
And look, it was just terribly sad, you
Yes.
know, that. But they did come over from America, and yeah, the free wine, and it was, without going into too much.
Yes. Yeah. I'd say
Yeah,
there was. I'd say there was tears on that
yeah,
day. And Clodagh, just go back briefly to the idea of experiments, and without being like, I don't want to be tabloid, press about it, but
yeah,
like, we hear that the children were experimented on.
yeah.
Do you believe it's true, or do you know it's true, or is it
I
real?
know. I actually have it here on my uh I can send it to you afterwards. But yeah, I certainly, with the Catholic Protection and Rescue Society, that's who I came from. Like, who were they rescuing me from
Right.
and protecting me from my birth mother? I had chromatography done on me on the, hang on now, on the 5th of the 8th, 1970. I was born on the 25th of June. And when I went out to my adopted mother, my mother said, I literally, you know, without going into too much, my bowels, I was in an awful state, a very, very bad state. I wasn't malnourished, but certainly, like, a lot of children had marmots, or, you know, and they died of it in the homes. So yes, I do have, and I wrote to Cúnamh, and because I've had very bad ill health the past 10 years, and they said they don't know why it was performed on me.
What is it
Then I
exactly?
went to my,
What exactly?
so it's a separation. It's basically like a heel test.
Okay.
And I would imagine that I was just very unwell, or a lot of people say that my parents obviously wanted to know that they were getting a non-defective baby.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever, I've looked into it, and if you Google chromatography, there's so many different types.
Mm-hmm.
But it was taking blood or extracting, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a scientist,
Mm-hmm.
but I do know, and like I now have very bad diverticulitis.
Okay. I remember when you're talking about thousands going missing. I remember I was in Letterfrack one day recently, and I went up the hill and into the little graveyard beside the orphanage. And I think because I work in orphanages, I kind of have a fascination, about other places that have orphanages.
Yeah.
And I remember walking into the little graveyard, and what they've done, I think it might have been some priest, he gathered the names of as many children as he could that went missing, literally disappeared. And so they've made these little stone hearts, and there's about maybe 150 of them in this beautiful little forest. And on every stone heart, there's like Tony O'Reilly, age 6.
Yeah.
Paddy, Byrne, age 4. And these are all children who they went in, but they never came out, and nobody knows where they went. And I
That's
remember
perfectly healthy.
when I saw it, I was on my own. It was silent.
Yeah.
It was Sunday afternoon, and I sat down and I just cried my eyes out. I couldn't
Yeah.
believe that these children had just disappeared. They were obviously killed or died or starved to death or beaten to death or whatever, and buried by the priests there. So do you think there's more tombs? Do you think
Yes,
more tombs?
absolutely. Yes. Yeah. At the moment with Besborough, there's 900 babies missing.
Okay.
Nobody can say where they're buried. Now, a lot in the home I was in and a few other larger homes, the children that died, their bodies were donated to, I think, the medical schools and UCD for experimentation.
Right.
They didn't even get a burial.
Okay.
You know, and certainly with the ones of us that were experimented on, that was Smith, Kling, Beecham, and I can say that because they have openly written back to us and told us what years the experiments have gone on, or so there is transparency with them. Yes, I do, without a shadow of doubt, and I do believe in St. Patrick's that there are babies buried there as well. But from St. Patrick's, the children went to Glasnevin, and there's around 4,000 children in the Angels plot. And once this is all over, my next thing is just to privately, if I can fund, putting a headstone for those children. You know, it's
oh my
because
God.
it's, yeah, they're in unmarked graves.
We should all be helping you with that, Clodagh.
Yeah.
But look, I can't let this go on too long, or else it's just too long to post. And people do need to hear your voice. So, I mean, sorry isn't even, I mean, what does the word, I don't know how. It's not like, I mean, we're all so sorry it happened to you all, but I mean, sorry is such, like, I don't, it's mind-boggling that you just, to me, it's mind-boggling that we just don't have a country that's embracing you, a government that's embracing you and saying, what, guys, what can we do for you? I don't know.
They are now, I think, yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit too late now that we're losing survivors. I'm 50 years of age, and certainly our lifespan is shorter because of what happened to us in the homes. And remember the addiction as well. A lot of survivors are in addiction, alcohol and prescription drugs.
And I've seen on your site as well quite a lot. It seems to be very high. I suppose because of the attachment issues and the broken hearts and the lack of support. You know, but TUSLA need to up their game. 2 years waiting on anything is outrageous. I mean, I mean, 2 years, for God's sake, you'd get world peace in 2 years.
Well, 2 years if you're lucky. Now, I'm going to tell you one story, and we can leave it at that because I know everybody has to go Sunday dinner and whatever. I did a search, and this particularly, I went into TUSLA and I was in front of the minister and the head of TUSLA were there. And again, they're so intimidating when we go in. This isn't my career. You know, and so I did a search for a lady and she got 79 pages back, right, from TUSLA. Now, what they do, Debbie, is we might get the pages back, but they redact everything. 79 pages were redacted. That woman drank half a litre of Bacardi that night and took an overdose. Now, thankfully, she survived and I found her mother for her. And when I said this to TUSLA...
Do you mean that information has been literally blacked out?
Yes, I mean, you wouldn't do it to a dog.
Yes.
We foster dogs here at the farm.
It's her own information and it's been blacked out by somebody who thought it was the right thing to do.
Yes.
Okay. And the reason they redact it is why? Is it in case the information...
To protect a third party.
Oh,
it would be it's 37.5 they put at the side, and that is to protect a third party.
Okay.
So even my father's letters that he wrote in looking for me after I went for a doctor, my birth father, that was all redacted.
Okay.
But they sent it out to me, redacted.
Redacted.
Like,
so it's gone. So it's literally deleted, is it? It's deleted.
No, they have it.
Oh, they have it. You're not allowed to have it. Jesus.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So TUSLA even know where your mother came from. And then they give you non-identifying information. Your mother was from, Southwest. And Jesus, we're demented, like driving down the Southwest looking to see if we can find our mother. We've one survivor in particular that everywhere he goes, he asks, are you my mother? He's that traumatized. And survivors always will have bags with them. I don't know whether you have the same in Russia with the older survivors, carrying around their paperwork. It is so important to them. It's a sad picture, isn't it, that I'm painting?
Oh no, I'm horrified. The more I see of it, I'm horrified. I really am horrified, because it's in Ireland, we're inclined to think, this only happens in faraway countries to poor children in, Haiti or wherever, the darkest forests of the world, kind of. But it's on our own doorstep, and I'm so ashamed. I'm so ashamed that you're not getting more support from every angle. And how dare to be intimidating or condescending? How dare they do that?
Well, they are extremely, and the fragility of survivors, and particularly you might have a mother going in. I mean, I did one search that actually a woman gave up 12 children for adoption.
Jesus.
Yeah, that's another story, and
I can't imagine what that story. I can't imagine why, but anyway.
There's a lot that went on, certainly in Ireland, and is still going on. But I think certainly with Facebook, and we become more free in ourselves, and I think that we're only kind of, I suppose, with the mother and baby home inquiry, we were growing up and we were so ashamed. I wouldn't tell anybody in school I was adopted. And like as a child, why did I have that shroud? Why do we have to carry? If somebody said, "Oh, Clodagh adopted," like I'd be purple red. And now we're shouting from the rooftops, "Look, we're adopted, we survived."
But that time changed the way we all feel about everything. And also now that we've no fear of the church, if anything, we look down on them because we know what's happened and what they got away with, the abuse they got away with. So, I mean, there's so few people with the respect left. Now, I know there's good priests in there, there's no doubt about it. And I'm sure there was some kind nuns in there as well. I mean, I went to a convent school myself and we had some very kind nuns. Some absolute bitches as well, I might add. But well, in general, there were some lovely people in there, so you couldn't, castigate them all. But I just hope that in January, we should really talk after January, Clodagh. And I mean, certainly if there's graves somewhere that need headstones, ring us all and put the word out. I mean, if there's children that are buried in a pauper's grave, I mean, between us all, if you put a tenner in, you know what I mean? You can solve, if you feel that would make a difference. But I mean, you've so many things that you need to address that, that's just one of the things on your list. So the best of luck with the January report. I hope you get some solace from it.
I will definitely talk, Debbie, I suppose, closer to the time. And certainly if people want, to find out about mother and baby homes or, certainly the history, contact me on Facebook. We're only too happy. And what we want as well, we want our children, and you're a grandmother like myself, that our grandchildren, and this is why with the repeal of the seal, I want my grandson to be able to go in and say, Clodagh Malone, and my testimony is there if he wants to do a history project. It's not in the history books in Ireland, mother and baby homes. It needs to be part of the curriculum. And the only way to stop is to educate people.
Yes.
It doesn't cost jack shit to be a good person. But it's been very enjoyable talking to you.
Oh, well, look, it's a pleasure to meet you, and have a lovely Christmas, and well done being your search angel, and well done, because I'm watching you knitting so many stories together, and it is amazing how many people are writing to you and saying thank you for doing this for me.
Oh, I'm blessed. I can't, that they let me into their lives, and the most important journey of your life is finding yourself. And for me to be allowed to go that journey with them, it's a privilege. Absolutely.
And I mean, just to finish on, I'm sure there are also very good people in Tusla who are also doing their best. But the problem is that if people are going in there and finding it intimidating, they shouldn't be. There's something wrong in our system when you guys are feeling another layer of intimidation, So
and certainly with January, hopefully they'll open up the records. We're not ashamed anymore.
Yes.
So I'm one of the younger ones.
Yes.
It needs to be in the history books. It needs to be blown out of the water.
In the history books, and open the doors and open the graves and open tomb up and dig up the bodies and do all of that, So listen, happy Christmas, Clodagh, and well done with all your work. And it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
Keep up the brilliant work.
Thank you, guys. Bye. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.